Can the Carolina Panthers make it 2 wins in a row and begin a second half turnaround? I'll give you my keys to victory versus Indianapolis right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and yes, Friday, your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Subscribe or follow our show for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, where on Wednesdays throughout the rest of the regular season, I'll be answering your weekly Wednesday mailbag questions either at me or DM me over on Twitter at Julian Council to get your questions in for next week's edition of the weekly Wednesday mailbag right here on Locked On Panthers. This episode of Locked On Panthers is brought to you by PrizePicks. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all in lowercase LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. The Carolina Panthers, coming off of a 15-13 walk-off win against the Houston Texans, will face off against yet another AFC South team as they welcome the Indianapolis Colts at 4:05 Eastern Time at Bank of America Stadium in Uptown Charlotte. A matchup pitting Frank Reich against his former team that he coached just a year ago. Jim Irsay had some choice things to say about Frank Reich on his way out, and he also really made Frank Reich's life hell while he was in Indianapolis. Zach Hicks, the host of Locked On Colts, had a lot of good things to say about Frank Reich, and the Indianapolis Colts fan base, by and large, still appreciates what Reich was able to do there in Indianapolis. 5 seasons, 5 different starting quarterbacks, and somehow left with a winning record. Now, that would be nice. That could be the case here in Carolina, where Frank Reich was thinking, I'm going to get some stability. I'm going to have an owner who's not going to be, always up in my business. So far, the quarterback stability is there, Bryce Young, and I think last week could have been a turning point here in his rookie season. And, well, the owner is the owner. But this is another opportunity for the Carolina Panthers, after starting off 0-6, getting out of the bye, handing play calling duties over to Thomas Brown, to win a game against a team they absolutely can beat. They head into Sunday's matchup, a 2.5-point home underdog, according to our friends over at FanDuel. And that is a spread the Carolina Panthers can absolutely cover, and a spread where I think the Carolina Panthers will win the game on Sunday, like I said yesterday on the show. And my listener out there, who I just won't mention their name, they've gone out and said, I need to make picks moving forward. And they said last week, if the Panthers win after you make a pick, you have to start making picks moving forward. Okay, I did it. The Panthers won last week. I made another pick on the show yesterday. I'm no longer going to be a coward for now. I can go back to my cowardice ways soon enough. But right now, I'm going to continue to make picks, and I think the Carolina Panthers will win this game. And honestly, going to the season, I felt like, okay, 2-4 would make sense in the first 6 weeks of the season. Then the Panthers could go on a little bit of a run after the bye, and we'll talk about the potential ahead of the Carolina Panthers if they're able to win some of these games in the next couple of weeks here in this month of November heading to December, where there's 3 straight matchups against NFC South division rivals. That could tell the tale of the season for the Panthers and the rest of the division. But first, as I always do here on Fridays heading into a game week, I give you my 3 keys to victory, and here they are. Number 1, the Carolina Panthers had a 15-play, 86-yard drive that took up the final 6:17 of the game last week to walk off and win in walk-off fashion with a 23-yard Eddie Pinheiro field goal. The offense, by and large, last week sucked. They weren't good. It was just as bad as we had seen in all the weeks prior. Now, they did a little bit different things, getting Chuba Hubbard involved as a lead back. Didn't run for a ton of yardage, but he did get the yardage on the ground when the Panthers needed it most to ice the game. So give him kudos there. But the Panthers didn't run the football well, even with Austin Corbett coming back and moving Calvin Throckmorton to left guard, which I imagine he'll stay there moving forward the rest of the season, as long as, of course, he performs well enough and stays healthy. So with the offensive line looking the way the Panthers hope it's going to look the rest of the way, they didn't run the ball very well. They also didn't protect it well at all. Ike Ekwonu gave up 4 sacks by my tally and a lot of tallies out there. So the Panthers offensively weren't great. If we're being honest, we watched it. They had 244 yards total. They had 86 on the final drive. You do the math. Things weren't very good until that drive. But now you've seen that, okay, we didn't play well offensively. We didn't protect. We didn't run the football. And we still found a way to win. That's what the Carolina Panthers players in that locker room should be telling themselves. Yes, what happened last week as far as the offensive output is not necessarily acceptable, but it came in a winning effort. So they know that they are capable of having a bad offensive day, but putting together a drive when they need it most and going down the field and winning the game. I would only imagine that they can take that momentum and carry it over to Sunday's game. Bryce has been able to handle the pressure, get hit, get up, make plays. And he made a ton of plays last week. He kept trusting in guys who let him down early in the game. We saw DJ Chark have an egregious drop. He went back to DJ for an important catch. He constantly went back to Adam Thielen. We saw John Domingo, who's had his ups and downs, have his best game as a Carolina Panther on Sunday, had that 40-yard receiving play, which is the longest receiving play of the year for the Panthers so far. So we saw Bryce Young be able to stick with those receivers, build some confidence in them, in this scheme, in Thomas Brown. And after you're able to go down and win the game, I would imagine that you're going to feel pretty good about yourself despite not really playing all that well on offense. And when you look at the Colts, they are ripe for the taking, y'all. Just like the Panthers defense, they've dealt with a ton of injuries so far this season, but that's not an excuse you can make because like the Panthers defense, like the Colts defense, and a lot of teams out there, everyone's dealing with injuries. Some injuries more important than others, but still the attrition of the season. We're here in week 9. It's gonna happen. Right now, the Colts are giving up the most points in the National Football League. They are ranked at the bottom of the league in scoring defense. They are not a good unit. And the Panthers have a chance to get after these guys. Right now, the Colts are ranked 25th in passing defense, 23rd in rushing defense. If there's ever a team for the Panthers to get right, Zach Hicks of Locked On Colts is saying, hey, this could be a get-right game for the Colts. Well, the Panthers should be looking at it the same way. Good right game against the Indianapolis Colts defense, that's not very good. Build from the momentum that was built last week when they were able to win that game in the final drive. Number 2, they got to force Gardner Minshew to beat them. And even if Anthony Richardson was playing, I would say the same thing. That's 2 turnover-prone quarterbacks who you can get after, man. So when I look at it on Sunday, Minshew, the last 3 weeks, has thrown 5 interceptions. 3 1 week in a loss, 1 the other 2 weeks in losses. So that's 5 straight. That's 5 interceptions over the last 3 weeks. That's 3 straight losses for the Indianapolis Colts. The Carolina Panthers have to be able to get some takeaways, force Gardner Minshew into some mistakes. Now, how do you do that? Of course, get pressure on him, play well in coverage. That's the ways you can force Gardner Minshew into some mistakes. And when he's made them, the Colts have lost. All the games that he's taken care of the football, the Colts have won since he's taken over as a starter. So 3 straight losses for Indianapolis, all coinciding with a grand total of 5 interceptions thrown during that 3-week period. Now, here's the thing, too. Why you need Gardner Minshew to be the one who beats you is because the Indianapolis Colts have a good running game. Jonathan Taylor, he's back after the injury, the contract dispute, all of that was going on in August and September. He's got Zach Moss as his running mate back there in the backfield. And so far, they have Indianapolis in the top 10 in the NFL in rushing, ranking 9th with 1,032 yards in 8 games this season. They also have 12 touchdowns on the ground, which is 4th most in the NFL right now. The Panthers ain't great against the run. They are 26th against the run as far as total yardage. They are 28th in yards per carry allowed at 4.7 last week. In that win against Houston, they gave up 110 yards rushing, but only 3.7 yards per carry. If they can do 3.7 yards per carry again, and then for the first time all season give sub 100 yards rushing, I think they're going to have a pretty good chance of winning this football game. But if Indianapolis goes out there and does what Minnesota, who's not a good running team, was able to do, what Miami was able to do, of course, what Detroit was able to do, what all the other teams they lost were able to do, which is run for 130 plus, the Carolina Panthers, I think, are probably going to lose this game on Sunday. So it's time for Derek Brown, Shai Tuttle, Deshaun Williams, that defensive front to buck up, get ready to go, and to stop the run. For Frank Lou to clean some things up. Xavier Woods, which I think was big with him coming back last week, as he can come in the box and can be able to help out in runs coverage and run support. That helps Carolina Panthers. So they absolutely have to force Gardner Minshew to beat them by stopping the run. And in number 3, win the turnover battle. We've looked at it. Atlanta, they turned them over 3 times. That's why they lost. You look at the game against Minnesota, that one turnover when the Panthers had the ball, had momentum, were driving, that changed everything. If you look at those 2 games, you don't turn the football over. Said this multiple times now. We're probably looking at a Carolina Panthers team that instead of being 1-6 is 3-4. That's how important turnovers have been for the Carolina Panthers so far when giving them up. You'll even look at the Lions game. The Lions are a much better team than Carolina right now, and probably in totality this season are going to be a much better team. But the Panthers don't gift them 21 points. What does that game look like? I still think it's a Lions win, but is it a win going away? No. Both these teams on Sunday are at -2 turnover differential on the season. Turnovers will be massive. If the Carolina Panthers, like last week, can get a takeaway, they only have 6 so far this season, which is bottoming in the NFL. Well, we saw that takeaway last week directly lead to 3 points. What was the difference in the game? 2 points. So that turnover in itself was key for the Carolina Panthers to go out there and win the game on Sunday afternoon against the Houston Texans. Get a turnover or 2 again on Sunday. Play complimentary football where you don't just get the takeaway, but you turn that takeaway into points, preferably 7 points with a touchdown and the extra point. And I think this team can win the game on Sunday against a Colts team that is absolutely very beatable. A Colts team that can get after them in the pass game and on the ground, but a Colts team that I think the Carolina Panthers can also get after in the passing game and hopefully, fingers crossed, on the ground when facing off against that defense that has not been good so far this season. So number 1, build on the offensive momentum built from last week with that 86-yard drive to close out the game and a walk-off field goal. Force Gardner Minshew to beat you. Cannot let Indianapolis run all over you. And number 3, it's important every single week, win the turnover battle. Those are my 3 keys to victory against the Indianapolis Colts on Sunday for the Carolina Panthers. Now, the Panthers win this game. Look at the standings, y'all. It ain't like they're that far behind. And I'm not saying playoffs. I think it's way too early to talk about that. I've had some people just bring up the fact the Panthers aren't that far behind in the loss column. When you look at the rest of the NFC South, we'll look at what's ahead for the Panthers just in case they go out there and win this game on Sunday. We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. I'll admit, I don't always play fantasy sports, but when I do, I go over to PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the most fun that I've had and that you'll have, winning up to 25 times your money this football season. You just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on the projected stats, and place your entry. Test your skills on PrizePicks this football season. It's the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. And who doesn't need $250? PrizePicks is really simple to play. You can make your picks and submit your entry in less than 60 seconds. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types are what make PrizePicks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Now, understand, y'all, on Sunday, it was a good day. The Panthers finally won a game for the first time since January. I got to come up here live on YouTube. By the way, after every Panthers game, live here on the Locked On Panthers YouTube channel, you can watch my reaction. Of course, you can listen to it on your podcasting streams or go watch it later on YouTube. But if you ever want to get the instant reaction about an hour after the game, live right here on the Locked On Panthers YouTube channel. Right after that, I was excited. The Panthers won a game. Finally got to talk about something positive. Didn't have to talk about all the bad things the Panthers did. And of course, hey, man, I'm going to still tell you some of the things that they didn't do great if they didn't do some things great. But the fact that they won, it was a party. It was a celebration. There's a reason to finally be happy on a Sunday afternoon here in the Carolinas and wherever you are across the world as a Carolina Panthers fan. And I saw on Monday morning, one of our listeners, Alex, hit me up in my DM saying, at Julian Council on Twitter, by the way, he said, did you really talk about possibly making the playoffs? LOL. You've had the Kool-Aid. He also said to me, I've been convinced we would make the playoffs, and that never stopped in spite of the 0-6 record. My God, Alex, the confidence you have in this organization is something else. And that kind of goes into, we talked about it before the season, like what were people's expectations? And, I heard the 10 wins, the 7 wins, playoffs, no playoffs. And I thought for the most part, 7, 8 wins, like that felt pretty realistic. Maybe 9 if things went right. It's just funny to me sometimes, like when fans, they have these expectations that may not be realistic. And then when the team doesn't meet those expectations, they get really ticked off in the end. Now, Alex is not one of those guys. Like, Alex has always been pretty even keel, level-minded whenever we've interacted via Twitter DM. So I just find it interesting that he has not wavered on this being a playoff team despite starting 0-6. Now, the Carolina Panthers, now at 1-6, thank God, are entering into a stretch where they can win pretty much every game on the schedule in the next 5 or 6 weeks. They can win on Sunday against Indianapolis. Now, again, I know someone's rolling their eyes. Just because they can win does not mean that they will win. And I would be surprised if they won all these games. But just saying, for this thought exercise, the Carolina Panthers can win a lot of the games ahead of them. You look at it, the only team in the immediate future who I know without a doubt is going to beat the hell out of the Panthers are the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys are a good football team. Maybe Dak gives away the football a couple of times, but the Panthers will probably do the same because they can't block. So I don't see how they're going to beat Dallas and Dan Quinn's defense if they cannot block the Cowboys. But maybe, just maybe. And we know what Bank of America Stadium is going to look like. It's going to be disgusting, the amount of Cowboy fans in there, even if the Panthers are coming off of 3 straight wins. That's just the reality of when the Cowboys come to town. And that's been the case every year the Cowboys have ever come to town in my lifetime here, living in Charlotte, having attended Carolina Panthers games growing up. So that's just going to be the reality. But aside from the Cowboys game, which we're going to go ahead and mark down as an L, I think the Panthers can win on Sunday. They can go to Chicago next week. If Justin Fields is not playing, Tyson Bagent, I would watch Sunday Night Football. I don't understand why all week long they built up. I do know why. But either way, it doesn't matter. Tyson Bagent, Justin Fields, Bears suck. That's a team that you can beat on the road. On a Thursday Night Football short week, I understand the challenges with that. Panthers can win that game. You get a little mini bye, come back, get Dallas. Maybe the mini bye helps them. I just don't know if it's going to help enough considering the talent deficit and the whole they can't block issue when it comes to playing against some of the defensive fronts here in the NFL. But you look at after that, you got Tennessee, who on the road, Will Levis look good. We'll see. He's going to have his growing pains, I imagine. I don't think Will Levis is going to come to the NFL and just start lighting it up week after week. He did it last week against the Falcons, which is frustrating. But we'll see if he can do it again this week. And we'll see if he can maybe are they the Thursday night game? I know I'm recording this on Thursday and they play on Sunday and you're listening to this on Friday. I don't know. Maybe he already did it again. Either way, I'm not super concerned about Will Levis and the Titans. And then after that, you got Atlanta. We got Tampa first on the road. You got at New Orleans. Then you have home against Atlanta, where things get interesting. So when it comes to this discussion, because you look at the NFC South standings right now, it's the Falcons at 4-4 atop the division, tied with New Orleans, who's also 4-4. Then Tampa at 3-4. Carolina, of course, at 1-6. Those 3 teams, you saw, you heard it. They all have 4 losses. The Panthers have 6. So in the loss column, as has been mentioned multiple times, it's been brought up to me so far this week, the Panthers aren't that far behind. Now in the win column, which is what matters most, the Carolina Panthers are, yes, still a ways to go. Even though 2 wins behind Tampa, still only 2 losses behind Tampa. You look at New Orleans and Atlanta, 3 wins behind them. That's more than the 2 losses. So they still have some catching up to do. But they also have opportunities with 4 division games left on the on docket to catch up. Now, it's unfortunate, of course, that they started the season 0-2, already put themselves in a hole in the division, but there's still an opportunity to turn things around. But before we can really have that conversation going into December about the Panthers maybe being in the thick of things in the NFC South, they got to win on Sunday. They got to win next Thursday. Then they need to find a way to win against either Dallas or against Tennessee. So more likely Tennessee. If they're 4-7, meaning 4-1 out of the bye, then we can start to have the realistic discussion of, okay, let's see where the NFC South's at. The Panthers are 4-7. They figure some things out post-bye. Maybe, just maybe, they could be back in the divisional race. Now, of course, it depends on what Atlanta, what New Orleans, and what Tampa do. But for Carolina, they got to take care of their own business right now. And by taking care of business, it means to me going 4-1 out of the bye until you get to December. If you can get to 4-1 out of the bye, get to December with 3 straight divisional games, 2 of them on the road, then we can have the conversation. And I don't think it's that far-fetched to think that this Panthers team, with Bryce playing better, looking more comfortable, a defense that I think can get a little bit healthier. We're going to give an update here momentarily on Von Bell and on Jaycee Horn. Why not this team have an opportunity come December to be right there in the thick of things? But of course, they got to take care of business first for us to even have that conversation. So I just want to lay it out here right now on this show. If they get to 4-7, then we'll have the conversation. Unless like someone has just gone crazy. Like unless like Atlanta or New Orleans or Tampa's like won like 4 in a row, then maybe not. But they go 4-1 out of the bye. Currently already 1-0 out of the bye. Then we can have the discussion. But until that happens, we won't have it. But we will look at the standings and we'll dare to dream. Because what's the point of any of this if you're not willing to dare to dream? So just a thought there for you all here on a Friday whenever you're listening to this. All right, let's take another pause here and I'll come back and give you an update on Jaycee Horn. Could he be back sooner rather than later? And take a look at the injury report as it is. Ooh, buddy, there's a lot of names on here. We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. Whenever the game clock stops, that's time to order in with DoorDash. Order pizza, wings, soda, burgers, or even just buns on DoorDash and get it all delivered without missing the game. Score football season's best deals on groceries, restaurants, retail, and more. All of your favorite restaurants and stores from retail to grocery are on the app, so you can shop everything you need to get game day ready. So if you have a favorite spot over there in Plaza Midwood or in Southend or wherever you are in Charlotte, hit them up on DoorDash. I always love to go to one of my personal favorites, have Hawthorne's Pizza right here in my neighborhood of Elizabeth. Bring me that pizza in. Enjoy that while, fingers crossed, watching the Carolina Panthers win on Sunday. Stock up on all your favorite appetizers and order all your tailgate gear on DoorDash and get ready to watch your team win. Get 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order. When you download the DoorDash app and enter code LOCK23, subject to change, terms apply. Again, that's 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter code LOCK23. Subject to change, terms apply. Let's take a quick look at the injury report that came out on Wednesday and Thursday ahead of the matchup against the Indianapolis Colts on Sunday. As I always tell y'all, we do not know these things officially as far as who will play and who will not play until Friday when Frank Reich speaks to the media. So this is going to be recorded and put out before Frank Reich speaks. Now, you may have listened or watched it after Frank Reich spoke to the media. But I'm just going off of trends of how things typically go when you look at the injury report throughout the week and who will be available on Sunday. So the big name that we saw early on in the week, and one of the big names, I don't even know if you can even call him a big name based off of how he's produced so far this year. DJ Chark did not practice on Wednesday with an elbow, but he was limited on Thursday. So it looks like he's going to be questionable, likely heading into the weekend. Again, we'll get more of an update once Frank speaks to the media. Claudin Charles, who they signed off of waivers, he's been a special teamer. He did not practice Wednesday and Thursday with a knee, so I guess he's probably going to be out on Sunday. Troy Hill and Hayden Hurst both had illnesses on Wednesday, missed practice, but they were full participants on Thursday, so no concern there. Justin Houston has not had nearly the impact that we all would have hoped and would have liked to have seen. He has not practiced on Wednesday and on Thursday with a hamstring, and at 34, hamstring issue. And hell, I'm 30, man. So I don't even know how I'm even trying to call this man old, but he's got a lot more wear and tear on his body than I do. So I would guess he's probably not going to play, which means a lot more DJ Johnson And that will be interesting to see if DJ Johnson can step up and have a big day. Because if it's not going to be DJ Johnson, Mari Barno, he'll get an opportunity. It's going to make it even tougher on Brian Burns. And Justin Houston looking like he's going to be out on Sunday. Taylor Moton, this is the same thing that happened last week. He did not practice on Wednesday because of a knee injury, and they also said it was rest. Then he was limited on Thursday. That's been the trend the last couple of weeks. No real concern there. And Laviska Shenault looking like he's going to miss the second week in a row. Did not practice on Wednesday or Thursday with that ankle as he was carted off against the Miami Dolphins ahead of the bye week. So Shenault out, and if they thought it was something that was going to keep him out long term, they would have put him on IR. That has not been the case so far for the Carolina Panthers. And Thielen got a rest day, but he was back out on practice on Thursday. Some guys that were limited on Wednesday in their status update. Von Bell missed the last 2 weeks or last 2 games with a quad injury. He was limited at practice on Wednesday with that same quad. He was also limited on Thursday. Maybe he plays. If he does, great news for the Panthers. If he doesn't, that means Sam Franklin and the rest are going to have to step up again there in the secondary at safety. Brian Burns limited with a elbow on Wednesday and Thursday, just like last week. He said he hyperextended it. I'd expect him to play. Austin Corbett coming off of that knee. One of those things where you got to monitor him as he's getting back into game shape. He was limited on Wednesday and Thursday. Not concerned about that. Frankie Louvu, kind of the same case. Had the hip pointer against Seattle, missed time in that game. But since then, he's played through it. Looked like he was 100% on Sunday. And no one's going to be 100%. But he looked like his old self on Sunday. Maybe it was Mama coming to town. I don't know. But Frankie Louvu was great. He was limited on Wednesday and Thursday for hip. Not concerned there. Chandler Wooten limited with a hamstring on Wednesday and Thursday. Would need him to be available as special teams guy, especially if Clyde and Charles is not available. Then Raheem Blackshear was limited with a groin on Wednesday, but full participant on Thursday, which is good as he was a little bit of a factor on Sunday in that win against the Texans. And I'd imagine he'd continue to be a part of the offense moving forward. Xavier Woods back on the injury report was limited with an ab injury on Thursday. So hopefully that's not too big of a deal. Because, Von Bell can't miss both your safeties once again. Then Cade Mays was put up there on Thursday as a full participant with an ankle injury. So no concerns there. It really looks like we'll find out about Chark. He seems to be someone who would be questionable going the game. Maybe Woods could be questionable. Same thing with Von Bell. I would expect Burns to play. I would expect Louvu to play. No concern about Taylor Moton. Looks like Shenault's going to be out. Looks like he's probably the only one. Yeah, he's probably in probably Justin Houston as well, just based off of how these things typically go when you look at the injury report heading into the weekend. Now, there was a positive update on Wednesday from Frank Reich on Jaycee Horn. We wondered when he's going to come back. There really hasn't been much of a timeline. He went out right before halftime, week 1 against Atlanta with a hamstring. It was non-contact. It was awful to see, considering that he's missed so much time, and the Panthers are going to have to make a financial decision this offseason, which is going to mean not exercising his 5th-year option because he's just not been available. When he is available, he's good. The problem, though, is availability, and there just has not been nearly enough for the Panthers to invest in him, at least in his 5th year. Now, if he comes out next year, plays well, doesn't get injured, then they can have those contract discussions. But right now, the team has to protect themselves. And hopefully Jaycee can be healthy and back out there ready to play. But Frank Reich said 1 to 2 weeks away. So maybe he comes back next week. Possibly it's against Dallas. And I would think it just hearing 1 to 2 weeks away, knowing that it's a short week, he's not going to play, but still, that changes things up as far as game plan, getting guys back involved. You would rather Jaycee Horn come back if you're the coaching staff, and the safest thing to do would to wait using that mini bye because of Thursday Night Football and have him come back with the home game against Dallas in a couple weeks. That would be the time that I would expect. That would be my target data from the Carolina Panthers. So Jaycee Horn, 1 to 2 weeks away, and that could help the Carolina Panthers moving forward, especially as we talked about it last segment. They could maybe get on a run here. And if they get on a run, they're 4-1 after the bye, we can start having conversations that we didn't think we'd be having a couple of weeks ago. But that's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, subscribe or follow the show for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, where on Wednesdays, I answer your weekly Wednesday mailbag questions, either at me or DM me to get those questions in for next week's edition of the weekly Wednesday mailbag right here on Locked On Panthers. But in the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole. As always, keep pounding. And I will talk to y'all on Sunday following yet another Carolina Panthers victory.